Karen Higgins blocked my farm, convinced she was seizing a rogue access point, but she didn't know I held the key to her entire kingdom. The irrefutable truth that her perfectly manicured world was built on my family's land. Retiring to my grandfather's 100-acre farm was meant to be a final act of peace. After decades spent meticulously preserving history as a county records archivist, I craved the quiet permanence of land that had been in my family since the 1950s. The old farmhouse needed work, a project to fill the space left by my late wife, Clara. My days were filled with the satisfying scrape of sandpaper, the smell of fresh-cut lumber, and the comforting predictability of the seasons. My closest neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a sharp-witted former teacher, would bring over jam and chat about local history. It was exactly the quiet I needed. That peace lasted until Oakshire Estates, a sprawling luxury development that had sprung up a quarter-mile down the road about 20 years ago, decided my property was under their jurisdiction. Their world of manicured lawns and identical houses felt alien to my wilder, older land. The first sign of trouble was a polite but firm notice taped to my mailbox about unapproved landscaping modifications. I chuckled, assuming a mistake. Then came notices about a non-compliant fence line and a mailbox that didn't meet aesthetic standards. I filed them away, labeling the folder Suburban Absurdity. My old colleague, Dave, who was now deputy county clerk, just laughed when I mentioned it over the phone. "Ignore 'em, Arthur," he advised. "Your farm predates that development by decades. They have zero authority over you." I should have heeded that advice, but also taken the notices as the warning they were. The absurdity escalated to outright aggression when I received a certified letter from Karen Higgins, the Oakshire Estates HOA president. The letter, embossed and formal, claimed my main driveway, the only access point to my farm, encroached on HOA common property, and demanded a retroactive road usage fee of $15,000, payable immediately, or they would restrict access. $15,000. For a driveway that had been here since before Karen Higgins was born? It was so outrageous, I could only laugh. "This is a scam," I told Mrs. Gable, showing her the letter. Mrs. Gable, bless her pragmatic soul, didn't laugh. "Arthur, don't underestimate Karen Higgins," she warned, her voice serious. "I know her type. She's a former developer, lost everything years ago in a bankruptcy. Now she runs that HOA like a petty tyrant trying to claw her way back. There are whispers she targets vulnerable homeowners, finds violations, and pressures them into selling cheap." Her words planted a seed of unease, but I still couldn't fathom anyone taking such an absurd claim to extremes. I tossed the letter into my Suburban Absurdity file and went back to sanding porch railings. I didn't know that while I was dismissing her, Karen Higgins was leveraging old debts and favors, orchestrating a move so audacious it defied belief. The morning of the earthquake started like any other. Coffee brewed, sun rising through the old oaks. Then came the sound, a deep, guttural rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. Curious, I stepped onto the porch and saw them. 3 massive yellow bulldozers lined up across the mouth of my driveway, completely blocking access. Standing in front of them, perfectly coiffed despite the mist, wearing a power suit and her inevitable clipboard, was Karen Higgins. Beside her stood 2 burly security guards and a man in a hard hat. The foreman, Mike, his name patch read. The scene was surreal, a suburban nightmare made manifest. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the porch. "Stop! What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted, my voice hoarse with disbelief and rage, barely audible over the idling machines. Karen Higgins turned, a chillingly satisfied smile on her face. She held up a hand, and the engines fell silent. The sudden quiet was deafening. "Mr. Finch," she called out, her voice crisp, artificially polite, carrying across the damp morning air. "Karen Higgins, Oakshire Estates HOA president. As per our certified notice, this illegal access point is being permanently closed today." She gestured towards the bulldozers, her confidence absolute. You ignored our demand to cease your encroachment and pay the usage fees. We have obtained the necessary documentation and authority to reclaim HOA common property." She held up a folder filled with official-looking papers. I ran down the steps, my heart pounding with a mixture of fury and bewildered shock. "Illegal access? HOA property? This is my driveway. This farm has been in my family since the 50s, long before your development even existed." Karen Higgins's smile didn't waver, though her eyes held a cold glint of triumph. "That's a common misconception, Mr. Finch. According to our records and filed plat maps, your access road crosses Oakshire Estates common property for approximately 20 feet. We've tolerated this encroachment out of goodwill, but after your repeated refusal to comply and pay the accumulated fees," she waved the folder, "which now total $25,000, the board has voted to enforce our property rights." 25,000? It was 15 in the letter. "What exactly happened in a week to increase the fee by 10,000? I demanded, barely containing my fury. "Additional administrative and enforcement costs," she replied smoothly, her lie delivered without a flicker. She handed me the folder. "Review these documents. Your access crosses our land. Mike here is ready to begin installation of a permanent barrier." I took the folder, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. As a retired county archivist with 30 years' experience knee-deep in land surveys and property records, I knew exactly what I was looking at. The documents looked official to an untrained eye. Stamps, signatures, complex diagrams. But my trained eye saw the discrepancies immediately. The timestamps didn't align with county filing procedures from 3 years ago, when this amendment was supposedly filed. Reference numbers were formatted incorrectly. Most damningly, there was a surveyor's certification bearing what was meant to be my signature from when I was still county surveyor, but the flourish on the A was all wrong. I had never signed my name that way in 3 decades of professional work. This wasn't just mistaken. It was a blatant forgery on an official county document. Mike, the foreman, shifted uncomfortably, glancing between me and Karen Higgins. "Look, Mr. Finch," he said quietly, wiping his brow. "I'm just doing what I was hired for. Miss Higgins says this is HOA property and you're trespassing. We're here to install a permanent barrier." He looked weary, reluctant. "You don't seem entirely comfortable with this, Mr. Davenport?" I used the name from his patch. He glanced nervously at Karen Higgins, whose eyes had narrowed. I owe Miss Higgins," Mike admitted, his voice low. "She helped me out years ago. Kept my business afloat during the recession. I got a crew to pay." He was repaying a debt, not a believer in Karen's claim. While we talked, I saw Mrs. Gable appear on the edge of her property line. She was discreetly recording the entire confrontation on her phone, giving me a subtle nod when our eyes met. At least I'd have proof of this insanity beyond my own testimony. "Now, Mr. Finch," Karen Higgins interjected, her artificial politeness wearing thin. "You've had ample opportunity. Sign the compliance agreement, pay the accumulated fees, and we can stop this. Otherwise—" She gestured to the bulldozers, their blades glinting menacingly. "We proceed." I took a deep breath, channeling 30 years of professional calm. "Miss Higgins, I need time to review these documents with counsel. I request 24 hours before you take irreversible action." "That's not how this works," she snapped, her mask cracking. "You ignored my certified letter. Either sign now and pay, or we proceed today. Your trespassing ends now." I noticed Mike and his crew exchanging uncomfortable glances. They hadn't expected this level of resistance, or the mention of my former profession. I addressed them directly, keeping my voice steady. "Gentlemen, I want you to understand something clearly. I was the county surveyor for 30 years before retiring. I signed the original plat maps for this entire area, including Oakshire Estates. I know every benchmark and monument in this county. I believe the documents you've been shown contain a serious misrepresentation of property lines, potentially involving forgery of official county records. If you proceed with damaging this driveway, which I assure you is entirely on my land, you may be participating in property damage and trespassing, which could expose you to significant personal and professional liability. Mike's eyes widened. County Surveyor? He looked from me to Karen Higgins, then back to the dubious property marker she'd shown him earlier. Doubt bloomed on his face. They work for me, Mr. Finch! Not you! Karen Higgins barked, her composure dissolving into frantic control. Your intimidation tactics won't work. But I could see the seed of doubt I'd planted was taking root in the crew. You have until noon, she declared, checking her watch, voice tight with suppressed rage. After that, we make the barrier permanent. As I turned back towards my house, cutting across the east field since my driveway was blocked, Mike called out quietly, Mr. Finch, sir? Did you happen to work on the original survey for this area back when it was all farmland? I did, I confirmed, glancing back. I know these lines intimately. Mike nodded slowly, a thoughtful, worried expression replacing his discomfort. He was clearly reassessing his position in this confrontation. Inside the house, I bypassed the coffee spill and went straight for the phone. I called Dave at the county office. Dave, it's Arthur. I need emergency access to some records. The Oakshire Estates HOA has bulldozers blocking my driveway, claiming encroachment. What? Arthur? That's ridiculous. Dave sounded genuinely shocked. Your farm predates that development by decades. I'm looking at the county plat map right now, and your access road is completely within your property lines. What the hell is going on? That's what I intend to find out, I replied grimly. And something tells me this goes deeper than a simple boundary dispute. Can you pull all records related to the Oakshire Estates development approval, original surveys, any amendments filed in the last 5 years, everything? I'm coming in. While Lucy drove me to the county building via her farm's seldom-used back road, she filled me in further on Karen Higgins. Her latest scheme isn't just about your farm, Lucy explained. It's about saving her reputation. The lead investor in her failed Highlands project years ago is the primary backer of Prescott Development, her husband's company. Getting your land, cheaply, is her chance to make things right with him and his powerful connections. This confirmed my suspicion of a larger, more sinister motive. At the county building, Dave had boxes of documents waiting. Arthur, there's definitely something shady here, he said, agitated. Some of the recent survey amendments are inconsistent. We spread the records out in a conference room. My archival knowledge kicked in. The original development plans from 20 years ago showed a clear, correct boundary, but a survey amendment filed 3 years ago showed subtle, inexplicable changes. This is forgery, I muttered, comparing the timestamps and formatting. The surveyor's certification, that's meant to be my signature from when I was county surveyor. It's a fake. Forging a county official's signature was a felony. As we dug deeper, the motive became clearer. We found preliminary development plans by Prescott Development, showing luxury condos exactly where my farm sat, Karen's husband's company. They needed my land, but couldn't pay market price. Then came the true bombshell. Cross-referencing the original Oakshire Estates survey with my grandfather's historical farm records revealed a surveying error made 2 decades ago. Oakshire Estates, when it was first built, had actually encroached on Rainier family trust land. The calculations were undeniable. Approximately 15% of the Oakshire Estates development, including parts of their common areas, the clubhouse, and even Karen Higgins's own house, was technically built on land belonging to me. My God, whispered Dave, staring at the maps. Arthur, not only is your driveway completely on your property, but they've been building on your land for 15 years. I sat back, stunned by the magnitude. My driveway was legal. Karen Higgins's clubhouse, her house, built on my land. The woman trying to bulldoze my property because I was supposedly encroaching had built her entire world on my encroachment. This went far beyond a driveway dispute. Knowing the truth was one thing. Proving it to a bulldozer crew taking orders from a desperate, crazy woman was another. I needed a plan with teeth and witnesses. I called Sheriff Jackson, who knew me from my county days. "Sheriff," I said calmly, "Karen Higgins has bulldozers blocking my driveway claiming encroachment, based on what appear to be forged county surveys with my falsified signature. And I just discovered her development actually built on my land." "Say no more, Arthur," he said. "I'll be there." Mrs. Gable had been busy, too. She'd started talking to Oakshire residents who had plenty of their own grievances with Karen Higgins. Many were horrified to learn their homes might be on improperly acquired land. By the time I returned to my farm with Dave and our boxes of evidence, Mrs. Gable had assembled a group of concerned citizens ready to witness justice. County Attorney Ellis also arrived, confirming we had grounds for emergency injunctive relief. My strategy was set. Confront Karen Higgins with the evidence of her fraud and my counterclaim of encroachment, demand the bulldozers be removed. If she refused, Sheriff Jackson would intervene, and County Attorney Ellis would file the injunction. But I knew Karen Higgins wouldn't back down easily. As we planned, the sound of machinery starting up cut us short. One bulldozer was moving toward my driveway. "They're starting early," I said grimly. We hurried out. Karen Higgins stood with 2 Oakshire security guards directing the operator. "Stop that machine immediately," I shouted. Just then, Sheriff Jackson's patrol car arrived, lights flashing. The operator shut down the bulldozer. Karen Higgins froze, clearly not expecting law enforcement. But the sheriff was just the opening act. As I stepped forward with my stack of documents, behind me stood Dave, County Attorney Ellis, Mrs. Gable, and at least 20 Oakshire residents. "Karen," I called out, "before you destroy any more of my property, there's something about this county and your own community that you really ought to know." The look on her face was priceless: confusion, anger, then the first flickers of fear as she saw the crowd. "This is a private matter between the HOA and Mr. Finch," she announced, trying to regain control, clipboard held like a shield. "Disperse! Security will escort you." Sheriff Jackson stepped forward. "Ms. Higgins, I'm Sheriff Jackson. You've got heavy machinery blocking property access and starting demolition without permits, based on potentially fraudulent documents. I need to see your authorization." Karen Higgins handed him the fake surveys, confidence returning. "Everything is in order, Sheriff. His driveway crosses HOA property as these surveys show. We gave him notice." Sheriff Jackson reviewed them, frowning. "These were approved by the county surveyor's office 3 years ago? Mr. Finch, weren't you the county surveyor then?" "I was," I confirmed, stepping forward. "And I never approved this amendment. That's not my signature. It's a forgery." I handed him my original surveys and deeds. "These are the original property records. My driveway is entirely on my land. And there's more. According to the original property markers, approximately 15% of Oakshire Estates, including parts of your common areas, the clubhouse, and Ms. Higgins's own house, was actually built on Rainier Family Trust land due to a surveying error 20 years ago." A collective gasp went through the residents. Karen Higgins went pale. "That's preposterous. These people are using jargon. Our development was approved." "Then perhaps you can explain why we found preliminary development plans submitted by Prescott Development, your husband's company, showing plans for luxury condos exactly where Mr. Finch's farm sits, contingent on acquiring his land," County Attorney Ellis stated, displaying the documents. "Or why multiple county records related to Oakshire Estates contain what appear to be forged signatures." Karen Higgins's composure shattered. "Those documents are confidential. Where did you get those?" she shrieked. She'd just confirmed their authenticity. A board member, Barbara Winters, pushed forward from the crowd. "You told us this was about covenant enforcement, Elaine, not development plans." She turned to me. Mr. Finch, is it true our homes might be built on your land? According to the original property markers and surveys, yes, I confirmed. But my issue isn't with individual homeowners. It's with the fraudulent manipulation of records and abuse of power to force me off my land. As I spoke, Mrs. Gable moved through the crowd, showing residents videos and testimony from other victims of Karen Higgins' schemes. Mark Davison, one of those victims, joined us, recounting how he'd lost his garden property to her tactics. The tide turned irrevocably against Karen Higgins. In desperation, she played her final weak card. "Sheriff, these people are trespassing on HOA property. This is a witch hunt." "That's difficult to enforce, Ms. Higgins," Sheriff Jackson replied calmly. "Given the property lines are in dispute and there's evidence of record tampering, a felony." At that moment, a sleek black SUV pulled up and a well-dressed man stepped out. "Elaine, what's going on? Why aren't the barriers installed? Investors are expecting an update." He froze, seeing the crowd and sheriff. James Prescott, Karen's husband, had just publicly confirmed their plan. Facing exposure, legal trouble, and a furious community, Karen Higgins made one last pathetic attempt. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, voice shaking. "Renair, I'll remove the bulldozers. We can forget this." "I don't think forgetting is an option, Karen," I said, my voice carrying. "Not when your actions affected so many." I turned to the residents. "Your property rights matter." I looked back at Karen Higgins. "You came here to destroy my access based on lies. You built your world on my land. Now your world is crumbling." The confrontation ended not with bulldozers, but with legal papers. County Attorney Ellis filed for the injunction and opened a criminal investigation. Karen Higgins and her husband were arrested later that day. The HOA board was dissolved. The cleanup began. Legal battles ensued. Based on my documentation and testimony, the county prosecuted Karen Higgins and her husband for fraud and forgery. They faced consequences for their scheme. The Oakshire Estates HOA was reformed under temporary county oversight. The residents, newly empowered and furious at how they'd been manipulated, voted in a new transparent board. As for the land encroachment, after lengthy legal proceedings, the court ruled in my favor. The 15% of Oakshire Estates, including the clubhouse and Karen Higgins' house, legally belonged to the Renair Family Trust. I wasn't interested in displacing homeowners who were victims of her fraud. I negotiated a settlement with the reformed HOA and the affected residents. The HOA paid a significant sum for the land they had encroached upon, establishing a permanent legal boundary. This money funded a community park on my property, open to both my farm and Oakshire residents, a symbol of shared land rather than division. Karen Higgins and her husband faced the consequences of their crimes. Their development plans imploded publicly. Their reputations were ruined. And the woman who tried to bulldoze my driveway because she thought I was encroaching lost her house and her freedom because she had unknowingly built her life on my land and forged documents to steal more. Justice, like a good survey, finds the true boundaries in the end.